Chapter 4. I woke up to someone slamming the door shut with force. I felt very sleepy and surely looked very weary. I rubbed my eyes and noticed the door had been slammed by little Mai, who was telling Moom and Papa that Sniff's body had been disposed of and that the police suspected suicide. I glanced at the clock and noticed that I had slept for multiple hours. Moomintroll had immediately told his parents about Sniff's death, while I had been so exhausted and stiff that I had fallen asleep on the couch in an instant. I glanced at Moomin Mama, who was scrubbing the floor, and noticed that she was holding back tears. A paralyzingly heavy and melancholic atmosphere had taken over the whole house. Moomin Papa came into the house with Snufkin, and I noticed that he had his old rifle with him, which I had never seen being used. Moomin Papa carefully set the rifle on the table and started cleaning it. I got up from the couch and asked if I could help somehow. Moomin Papa nodded and instructed me, Moomintroll, and little Mai to nail all the windows in the house shut. Snufkin, on the other hand, was told to block every entrance. So, we got right to it. Moomintroll stayed to work on the downstairs windows, while me and little Mai went upstairs with hammers, nails, and boards. After we were finished nailing the windows, little Mai told how she was still very skeptical about the Groke's existence, but she thought that extra precautions weren't that bad either. I nodded understandingly, because logically thinking, this whole story was totally unbelievable. In a short amount of time, 3 individuals had killed themselves and, in one way or another, mentioned a horrible monster following them called the Groke before their deaths. I got shivers as I reminisced about the hill-shaped creature I had seen in the mirror, and most of all, its small, lifeless eyes and dreadful grin mixed with loneliness, evil, and madness. I was also somewhat surprised by how quickly Moomin Papa had started taking precautions, and just generally the fact that he really believed that some kind of creature was pursuing us. Everyone at the Moomin house had known Sniff well, so suicide couldn't have been possible. As Moomin Mama well put it, there had to be something supernatural and horrible at play. Paranormal was indeed what the whole thing felt like, which made me even more worried, since if she was some sort of spirit, nailed windows and blocked doors couldn't hold her back. I followed little Mai downstairs and noticed that the sky had already begun getting dark and the clock was at 9. Moomin Mama had managed to make some punch, which I immediately began sipping. I drank from my cup slowly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt warm and relaxed, as the warmth of the drink caressed my insides. Moomin Papa announced that we would have watch shifts over the night. They would take place in the living room, and the shift would change every 2 hours. Moomin Papa was the first who would be on watch, while Moomin Mama didn't have to. My shift would start at 2, and on the watch before me would be Snufkin. The thought of being on night watch felt terrifying at the very least, but I was nonetheless happy that the guarding was done in the first place. Who knows, maybe I could even get some sleep tonight. I drank 2 more cups of punch and then stepped upstairs and into my own little room. Little Mai stayed tonight in the guest room where Sniff had stayed a couple nights earlier. Snufkin, on the other hand, had a bed made for him in Moomintroll's room. I closed the door to my room and locked it with care. I decided to leave the candle burning since the thought of sleeping in a dark room didn't feel inviting in the slightest. Therefore, I crawled into my bed, set the alarm on my clock, and closed my eyes. Even though the events of the day had been shocking like the previous day and I had taken a long nap earlier today, I fell asleep fast. I woke up to the clock ringing and was met with an unpleasant coldness. I got goosebumps as I listened to the illusory silence in the house. I heard faint rustling everywhere, in addition to a dreadfully low droning noise. After laying for a moment, though, I got up and tried to think positively. I put on more clothing while wondering why it was, again, so cold in the house tonight. Could the Groke have somehow gotten in? I pushed all Groke-related thoughts aside and opened my door, It creaked open and a dark hallway spread out in front of me. My room was located at the far end of the house, meaning that to get downstairs, I would have to walk in the darkness for a while. The thought of doing this also didn't make me feel fantastic, so I lit a new candle and fearfully stepped into the hallway with it. Far away ahead of me, I saw the staircase leading downstairs. There was a weak light being reflected from the staircase, so I could safely think that Snufkin would be there. So no problem. I took a couple shaky steps forward, still being careful not to make too much noise. After walking for a while, I was in front of the door to Little Mai's room and noticed that it was ajar. I decided to peek inside to see if everything was all right. So I moved my hand onto the handle and slowly opened the door a little more. I was met with the chilliest breeze I have ever experienced, which blew my candle out. In front of me spread out the sight that, at the latest, verified even all the irrational fears I'd had regarding the monstrous creature's existence. The room would have otherwise been completely dark, but some moonlight managed to shine through the nailed window, reflecting right in front of Little Mai's bed, where there stood a humongous dark figure. The Groke. The creature was standing with her back towards me, and I couldn't make out a proper form. Excluding the head, which was slightly distinctly visible from the creature's body. Hill-shaped is the word that would best describe that huge, dreadful creature whose mere presence invoked indescribable fear and dread within me. The thing just stood still, and I saw mist floating from underneath her body. My mind was clouded, and I could hear a mad shriek and wail-mixed scream be forcefully let out through my throat. The creature heard my voice, and I felt sheer horror as I saw her turn towards me. Before I managed to come face to face with the being, I sprinted at a mad speed towards the first floor. For one reason or another, running in that pitch-dark hallway felt slower than normal. The darkness, loneliness, and cold breeze following me felt like they were pulling me back and preventing my escape. I was in a full panic, but I tried to make my way towards the staircase and the light looming ahead with all of my strength. I didn't look back once, but I knew the Groke was after me. Some kind of new sense awakened by the extreme panic and despair created a drearily sharp image in my mind of the hill-shaped monstrosity following me, sliding closer and closer. I saw the lifeless eyes, those white dots, watching me. I felt a dreadful coldness, which was nonetheless small compared to that terribly melancholic feeling of loneliness caused by the being's mere presence. The distance felt endless, and moment by moment I thought the creature would catch up to me. I didn't think with common sense in that situation, but instead, I purely trusted my instincts. Eventually, I noticed I had progressed to the staircase, but my legs, numb from the cold, got tangled up with each other, and soon I found myself falling downstairs. I flew as if slowed down, like a ragdoll down the stairs. Finally, I was lying at the bottom of the staircase, tasting the blood gushing in my mouth. I felt my consciousness slipping away, and the last thing I saw before fainting was the back of the creature at the top of the staircase, slowly retreating back into the darkness. To be continued in the next chapter.